Okay, if you thought that last run was a tutorial, then come and join me for this next one where Roadkill Revenge is going to give us a full introduction of Caves of Qud. Take it away, Rody.
Hello, it is I, your good friend RoadkillRevenge, here to show you all about this really cool game. How are you doing, first of all? I know you've been around hosting for that last run. The last one was really good.
Feeling pretty good right now. I'm very interested to see this game because I'm not familiar with it at all.
Excellent. So, this is going to be a little bit different than the last showcase we had. First of all, yeah, again, it is I, RoadkillRevenge. I stream at twitch.tv/RoadkillRevenge. Usually I do speedruns, but today I'm doing something a little bit different because I just sort of want to do a funky little showcase to show off an obscure game that I really, really love.
I can relate to that.
Sure. So, because this is like not a typical speedrun, Tech, if you're listening, you can go ahead and just start the timer whenever you'd like. Because we're going to keep it casual, and I'm just going to be jumping in and talking about the game, and hopefully some of my enthusiasm will rub off on somebody in the audience. That is my hope. So first of all, what is this game? Right now, there's not a whole lot of game on the screen. This is just the main menu. Caves of Qud is a procedurally generated roguelike, and it is very old school, and it very much leans into what is really fun about procedural narrative. So in this game, some things are static every single time, but by and large, just by taking a different type of character in, the types of stories that get generated just by exploring the world are just really cool and interesting and memorable. In the past, I have had a character accidentally get their own face cut off by a monster, and they were able to salvage their face and then put it back on their face as face armor. I have had a character fall into a portal and wind up like 50 meters underneath the earth and had to fight their way back out. I've had all kinds of crazy, ridiculous ways that characters have died in this game, and just cool things that I found. So it's very much just about enjoying the sort of randomness of it and just trying to figure out more about the world. It is sort of a weird, like, sci-fi themed game. There's a lot of interesting lore going on in the background, but that's basically it. It is sort of hard to get into, though, which is why I think doing a tutorial like this is like really good. It's a lot of menus, it's a lot of very lo-fi graphics, but once you get used to it, once you sort of crack open, like just figuring out how to engage with the game at all, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that can happen. So, before I get started, is there any do you have any questions just of your personal curiosity about this game or what you're about to get into?
No questions, but it sounds pretty intense, so I'm ready to see how this pans
Okay,
out.
cool. I know I've definitely given it really high praise already, and I'm going to continue to do so for the rest of my life, probably. Okay, so first of all, you're not going to be interacting with this game the way you would probably expect. Basically, so hopefully everybody can see my mouse cursor. I do have mouse cursor sharing on. Not because it is required to play the game, quite the opposite, but just so that I can point to stuff on the menu for y'all to see.
I do see it.
Sweet. So first of all, the main way you're going to be interacting and moving in this game is actually with the numpad. So if you don't have a numpad on your keyboard, it is still possible to play the game, but it is going to be a hard time. For one reason, and one reason only, and that is because of diagonal movement. So if you look at your numpad, you've got your 9 buttons, and 2, 4, 6, and 8 move you in like a vertical or horizontal direction, but you can move diagonally with 7, 9, 1, and 3. So it sort of is just functioning as like an 8-directional numpad, basically. But diagonal movement gets really important when you get into like really tough combat situations, so it's really important to be able to do that. So if you don't have a numpad and you still want to play the game, I would really recommend, and I'm going to be talking about this more later, going into... I might have to actually be in the game to do this. But going into your options and customizing your key binding so that you can do that diagonal movement, whether it's like by holding Alt or something, that's just like super duper important. Another thing is that whenever you see yellow letters like this, so you see how even here on the main menu, the N in New Game is yellow, the first letter is yellow, that is generally a hint that that is a hotkey. So if I press N right now, it goes to New Game. If I press C right now, it goes to continue, and etc. So that's a nice way to sort of tell what hotkey you can use for any given moment. And this game is just full of hotkeys. You get used to them as you play the game, but like there's just a lot of memorization, it feels like. But when in doubt, you can always check your key bindings if you like forget how to do something. Okay, so let's start a new game. And this is really nice that in recent updates of this game, they have added different game modes. So these are pretty self-explanatory. So Classic is permadeath. Even if you choose Classic, it is possible for you to like Alt F4 and save your character in a worst case scenario. But this is a roguelike, so you're generally expected to just go and see what horrific death you end up with your character. At least that's how I tend to play them, because despite having like somewhere around like 100 hours in this game, I think, I have not made it very far into the game because of just how much there is to do.
That is the nature of roguelikes.
Yeah, and I have a tendency to be very stubborn about playing it in classic mode. So, but there is also roleplay mode, which is cool because every time you go to a settlement, it checkpoints, and I think it counts a lot of different things as settlements. So, whether it's like the predefined locations or whether it's like randomly generated towns, but I also think that it will checkpoint just various other times too. At least it feels like it does. So essentially just more saves. Wander mode is really interesting, and I've never used this mode, but it's nice because it's essentially just a little bit more gentle. Like a lot of animals and things like that will not attack you by default, and you get XP for exploring and discovering stuff as opposed to like killing enemies, which is a pretty cool mode, honestly. Like, so that you never, but you basically want to avoid combat wherever possible and just explore.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's also daily, which just randomizes your character and stuff. We're definitely not gonna do that, but it's cool if you want to like, you know, participate in the leaderboard of like all the people playing with the same starting character, that sort of thing. If you've played other roguelikes, you've probably seen that before. But for now, I'm going to go into roleplay mode, and then now we got to start thinking about our character. So, and also, please tell me if I'm talking too fast. I feel like I'm talking really fast.
You're good.
Okay, deep breaths. I'm just so excited to talk about this game. Okay, so, your character that you make in this game is going to, like, really change the way that you experience the game. So I'm going to be talking about like some beginner-friendly things you might want with your starting character, but some of the fun is just making something weird and seeing what happens. And when I say unusual, this is what I mean. So in Caves of Qud, almost every person and every sentient being is some sort of mutated character who is like survived and evolved over like a long time of this just being in this strange world. And so as a result of that, mutated characters are very common, and it's a way that I would recommend to start playing it first. The alternate is like is Truekin, who are just lore-wise, they're essentially just like the privileged dudes that have a lot more technology. So they're focused on like cybernetics and like enhancing your body as opposed to mutating your body and getting cool new abilities that way. So I'm just gonna go into mutated human here. So inside the two different types, you also have different like subclasses, and again, these are all just very just depends on sort of what you want to do. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but there's some really cool ones. And also one thing to note about this is that it determines what your sprite is going to look like, basically forever. There are ways to like take other bodies, but we're not going to get into that. Yeah, this game is just so, again, highly simulated that if you want to do something, you probably can. If you want to play as like a giant spider, you could probably find a giant spider and then like put your brain into their body. It's possible for you to do something like that if you want.
That's versatility.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So some of the ones I would recommend for starting are probably Nomad here. And that's because you start with extra toughness, which I'll talk about what skills do here in a second. If you've ever played like any tabletop role-playing game, a lot of these things are probably going to start looking very familiar in terms of how the character generation goes. But they also start with reputation with this one particular tribe that is going to be helpful for being safe in certain biomes. I'll talk about reputation later. But one of the reasons they're really good starting class is because they start with a recycling suit, which is a very special piece of armor that essentially lets you like recycle your sweat into fresh water. This is a survival game. You do have to drink water to survive, so that's really, really useful. It also has good armor, and it also and water is also useful not just for drinking. In this universe, where everything is covered in salt, basically everywhere, fresh water is your currency. So basically, recycling suit just gives you free currency over time, which is pretty cool. So that one's one I would recommend. There's a bunch of other really cool ones. I think a lot of people tend to recommend this one too because they're just like low intelligence, high strength punch stuff build, which is gonna get you through a lot of the early games super easily. Because in this game there are like, you can use like range weapons, you can use melee weapons, you can use like mental powers and stuff like that. But some of them are just harder or easier for you to like work with at different parts of the game. So as you get to mid game, your like melee build probably isn't gonna work against like people who are trying to possess your mind or whatever. So if you do take those builds later on, getting more familiar with the game, it'll be way easier to know like what things you have to prepare for further down the line. But early in the game, melee builds are really good. Okay, so instead of going into just creating a class, I'm just going to go into these presets because they do provide some really good presets if you don't want to have to care about character customization. I think making custom characters is fun, personally, for these sorts of games, but the presets are still really good. So I would still recommend a mutated human, and I would recommend this one here at the very left for beginners, the Marsh Tar. And they also have unique sprites, which is fun. But so this one is another sort of melee-based build, and it starts out with two important things, and this is something that as a beginner, and thinking about like how to survive in this game, because it is very difficult and there's lots of ways to just get murdered. Two things you want are a powerful ability, an ability to hit it ranged, and a emergency escape button, basically. And this this build starts with all three and has a lot of toughness, so it's a pretty good one. So just to look at it a little bit, so as you can see, we have a strength, agility, toughness, intelligence, etc. When it comes to creating characters in this game, you probably want to be, for a beginner, I would definitely say you want to be balanced, generally. In a lot of games, having like very specialized types of characters are good, and it is good in this game too. But you don't get very many new stat improvements as you level up. So the ones that cost 2 points, sorry, let me clarify. So if you have under 18 in a skill, it only takes 1 skill point to level it up. But after that, it takes 2 skill points to level up. So it's way more efficient just to sort of flatten out your skills. That way you're not lacking in anything. That's just a general tip. You can do whatever you want. So this is the full list of mutations. So this is how like much you can customize what sort of mutant you're playing. You can have. I have one preset that is an octopus that they have a beak and like multiple arms and things. This preset has multiple legs and a freezing ray, which is cool.
I like the look
And
of photosynthetic skin.
yeah, that one's actually really useful. So this game does have a day and night cycle. But this makes it to where when you're in the daytime, you basically don't have to eat food, which is nice. And it increases your reputation. So there's a lot of different things that these things do, and especially mutated things. Like a lot of them will increase your reputation with certain other factions. And which is something that can be very, very useful for a lot of different reasons. But mostly with keeping you safe in the later game from enemies that would normally attack you. So yeah, like it's very easy to just come up with cool ideas of cool things you want to be. Wings is another one that I would recommend as a good beginner ability because of it's just versatile and it helps you avoid some stuff that can be a problem. And it's just sort of fun to be able to like fly to get away if you're in danger. So yeah, this starting character has teleportation. So like I mentioned, they have a melee power, a range power, and a eject button. This teleportation is basically their eject button. So you can, it's probably pretty self-explanatory. You can just teleport if you want. So they don't have too many mutations, but they're all like really powerful ones. Because they have different costs associated with them. I don't know if you can see the numbers here. That's what that means. That's how many like points it's worth. So if I take out, if I get rid of Freezing Ray, I now have 5 points remaining. You can see down here, to spend on them.
So just from all of this, I'm like, this is very tabletop RPG so far, and initially that makes me think, I wonder if there's a tabletop RPG of it. No, just play this game.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel very tabletop RPG in terms of, yeah, especially the character creation, and looking at this sort of, you can basically be whatever you want. You could be, like, again, this is like a 4-legged centaur creature that runs at enemies with an axe. You could also make like a gunslinger character, or like a scholar who takes apart stuff and is more focused on like trade and using like grenades and stuff. So there's a lot of flexibility, but yeah, I still think melee is a good option for starting characters, so I'm just gonna jump in like that. Okay, we're almost done. We got to name the character. So what do you think I should name the character? You can name, if you do random, it basically gives you a keyboard smash, so like anything is on the table.
Oh boy. I wasn't ready for this. Oh,
We can do Oh, we got some chat suggestions. Lacerator? Oh my gosh, that is very, that goes hard. I'm gonna go with that. That's perfect.
that's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, so next. Okay, so the last thing we have to do is pick where we start in the game. These are essentially just all biomes that are all in sort of the opening of the game. So really, it just determines sort of your preference of which one is cooler. You do get different stuff. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, it says things that you get. These are all useful. There's not really one that's better than the other, except when you are a beginner, in which case you should always pick Joppa. And that's because Joppa is sort of a canon location, like it's always there. It's got characters there that are always there, and quests that are pretty easy to do for a beginner. So, and in general, like, Joppa's honestly probably the best start, even if you're not, like, just learning out, because there's just reliable stuff there. But sometimes the starting quests here get boring when you do them 50 times, so these ones will come with like randomly generated ones. So let's embark for the caves.
Oh boy. Oh, this is neat.
Okay, so we have embarked for the Caves of Qud, and now we are here. On randomly generated date, we arrive at the oasis hamlet of Joppa along the far rim of the Great Salt Desert. Just so you know, there are definitely names in this game that I am not going to try to pronounce because they are very much keyboard smash territory. You're welcome to try if you're brave enough, Vale, but I am not.
I'll give
um,
it a shot if it comes up.
Okay, okay. So all around you, moisture farmers tend to groves of Viridian water vine. There are huts wrought from rock salt and brine stalk. On the horizon, Qud's jungles strangle chrome steeples and rusted archways to the earth. Further and beyond, the fabled spindle rises above the fray and pierces the cloud-riven sky. Okay, so we are now in the game proper. So this is generally what the gameplay looks like, and this is what I meant when I said it's like a very lo-fi game, very old-school game. What do you mean you don't know how to pronounce something like Arenium? Question mark? Okay, so there's a lot of things to explain because there's a lot of information on the screen right now. So I'm just gonna take it one thing at a time, and feel free to stop me and ask questions. Cool?
Okie dokie.
Okay. So, the UI first. So can you see? Hopefully you can see my cursor. I'm gonna be moving it a lot, so it'll hopefully stand out. Here at the top of the screen, this is just information for us. So this is us, this is what we look like, this is our name, this is how warm we are in Celsius, I believe. That can become relevant because if things get hot enough, things can catch on fire. Picture like, picture like Breath of the Wild, you know? If you're like carrying a like wooden weapon on your back and you like go into the volcano, it might just catch on fire.
Yeah.
This game has basically like something that would logically happen like that will happen in this game. We started off, this is our state of being right now, so we are sated, which means we're not hungry. We ain't wet, which is because we are in a just wet locale. I think we're basically always wet here in Joppa.
That's how I want to be, wet and sated.
Wet and sated, exactly. This is this is our carrying capacity. So every time you see this symbol that's like the hashtag for you young whippersnappers, as you might also know, that symbol is called the pound sign. So it stands for pounds.
I believe its original name is the Octothorpe.
The Octothorpe, yes. But in this context, it is saying 349 pounds.
A weight indicator, okay.
Yeah. So we have a lot of carrying capacity. That's one reason why this character is also a good starting character, because those 4 legs just give you extra carrying capacity, which is nice. This is how much money we have, which we'll talk about money in a moment. This is our quickness and our movement speed. I am not going to talk about how much math goes into this game because a lot of it just happens in the background and you don't really have to know, other than quickness is going to determine how many actions I get to do per turn, and movement speed is how much distance I can move per turn on average. Sort of self-explanatory. This is my armor value, this is my dodge value, and this is my mental armor. So if you played other tabletop RPGs, those also might be intuitive, but just in case, you know, just for posterity, armor value is a value that has to be met by your enemies in order to do damage to you. Same thing with dodge value, which determines whether or not you get hit by attacks or not. And this is the same thing, but for things that attack your brain, like when people try to, like, kill you with mind powers and stuff, which will happen.
It's nice that they're separate, though, instead of just all one thing.
Yeah, so you can really customize, like, sort of what your weaknesses are, and also cater your builds to certain types of enemies before you try and, like, deal with them. This is the date, and this is the time, so this is just a little indicator of what time it is. I believe right now it's late. And then this is where we are. So that's the top. It's just giving us information about our character. Our HP, this is, if it gets to 0, we die. This is our level and how close we are to leveling up. These are just like settings, and these are really only useful if you're playing with a mouse, which you probably shouldn't do unless you have to. So, and these are all things I'm going to talk about in a bit, but it's mostly just for exploring and stuff. And this big panel on the right side is really important because this is just like the log. So if I move, okay, and something happens, so this zealot over here, is talking about his religious business, it will appear in this log, and basically everything that happens will appear here. So I passed by a torch, I passed by some water vine, and that becomes really, really critical when you are trying to figure out what the heck just happened, which will also happen often, and will also be useful in combat for you to see, like, why can't I do damage to this enemy? If you look at this log, it will do stuff like tell you, oh, you didn't penetrate their armor or whatever. And if for whatever reason it goes away, there is a toggle. This is when we're getting into the hotkey city that is this game. It's the divide by symbol. You can just hide it completely, but I would recommend having it open because it is valuable. Also, supposedly there's different styles of it that can appear on like different sides of the screen, but for some reason mine isn't doing it, even though I definitely have the right button map, so I don't know why it won't change styles, but I can't hide it. Okay, and down here at the bottom, again, just more information. So we have active effects, which, so like if I splash into this water, well, let me splash, here. Now it says I am wading and I am wet. So those are things that can affect things that target me, right? If you're wading, I believe you can't sprint. So, like, there's things like that to keep aware of. And so that just tells you what your active states are. Okay, I'm just going to walk this water off. There we go. This tells you what you're currently targeting, which is relevant for, like, your abilities. This tells you how much ammo your weapons have, if you have weapons with ammo. And then here at the bottom is just your abilities. So I'll talk about those in a minute. You can click on those to use them, but at any time I say you can click on something, just assume I'm going to say you shouldn't do that, because it's way easier to play this game without the mouse, I promise. Okay, so that's all the UI. It's a lot of information that they give you at any given time, and not all of it is, like, relevant to you all the time.
But it all has its place.
It does, it does. And when it gets into really, like, hard combat encounters, any one piece of that information can be useful, so. But the good news is, you might notice that I'm not moving around or doing anything. The game is completely turn-based, so if you don't do any inputs, nothing will change. So it's, if you like those types of games that have you, think about your every move as opposed to, like, going through something as quick as possible, and always being able to pause and, like, fully assess the situation, this game is like that. Okay, so like I said, the numpad is really important for playing the game. I am moving right now. I don't know if you can see me down at the bottom of the screen.
Doing a little dance.
Doing a little dance, yep. I am moving using the numpad, so going up, down, but you can also go diagonally. Because diagonal counts as one movement. So it does. So in some games, if you're on a grid, you have to go to the right and then go up to go diagonal. I'm gonna zoom in. But in this game, you can go straight diagonally. Which means if there is a gap in something that doesn't look like a gap, you can go through it. So, like, for example, this building, if this corner wasn't there, I could go through it because you can go through diagonally.
That's very retro of it.
Yeah, very, very retro of it. Okay, so, like I said, this game has 50 million key mappings that do different things. In general, you're just going to be moving around on the numpad and keeping your hand hovered over the A button, because the A button opens your abilities, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But if there's ever something where you're like, I don't know how to open a chest, or I don't know how to go downstairs, or whatever, or can I wait turns, or can I rest, and that sort of thing, you can always just pick escape and then go to your key mappings here, and then it has everything here, and you can customize anything. So if for whatever reason you don't like something, this is the place to go. In general, I actually can't remember if there's any of these I've changed from the default, so hopefully that's not confusing if I did. But yeah, so if there's ever something that's like, can I do something, it's probably mapped here. But I'm going to talk about some important ones, some ones that you're going to be using all the time just to, like, move around. So again, movement is numpad by default. There are different ways to move. If I press W, As you can see, whenever I press W, you see how the UI at the top of the screen changes? And it says walk, select a destination.
Yes.
Whenever you use certain types of abilities that require you to, like, give it different information, like what direction you want to cast a spell or whatever, it's gonna prompt you like that up here. So that informs me that I press the walk button. So if I do that and now I press right, my character will just, I'm not touching anything right now, they'll just auto walk to the right until they hit something.
Oh, cool.
So there's things like that that you can do. But most critically, and this is how you're probably going to be exploring most like weird dungeons and stuff, there is a hotkey, for me at least, it is on the 0 on the numpad, and 0 is auto explore. So if I press 0 right now, my character is going to just run into every room and just discover every part of this this like tile all automatically on their own.
Cool.
So that's convenient because then you don't have to mess. It would probably not be very good on the hands otherwise.
I need to make note of this this log thing I'm seeing. It's Stesiphus meows.
Yes, Stesiphus.
Very important.
Stesiphus. So Stesiphus, everybody say hi to Stesiphus, is sort of one of the mascots of this game. It's just a little cat that is in the starting town, and we can pet Stesiphus. And this is actually a fun tip, like beginner tip. If you pet Stesiphus, you start to glow, which doesn't seem like a weird, notable thing, but it does mean that you can see when it is dark while you are glowing from Stesiphus. So.
Cat powers.
Handy cat powers, yeah. In fact, one of the most like prominent mods I think on the Game Workshop is to like duplicate Stesiphus and to make Stesiphus a companion and stuff. So yeah, there's stuff like that.
Amazing.
Okay, so that was auto explore. And the really important thing about auto explore is that if you at any point perceive a hostile enemy, it will stop auto exploring. Which is really good, because if it will just keep auto-exploring and there's an enemy chasing you and shooting stuff at you, it's very easy to have it just murder you. So, it can be annoying if you're, like, trying to, like, ignore an enemy or something that's gonna stop every time. But I promise you it is super worth it. So that's really useful. Another thing for exploring that is gonna be your best friend is the L key. Because L stands for look. Okay, so if there's something, say there's this, I'm gonna zoom in so it's easier to see what I'm talking about. So there's this guy right here, right? I don't know anything about him. He might be hostile, he might be not. If I press L, it brings up this little brackets around my character. And that is because it's essentially just an inspect thing. So without progressing the game state and without moving, I can like get a lot of information about things. So by using look and looking at this dude, he has a description, he has a lot of information and history that's generated about him. In my opinion, this is one of the really cool things about this game, is that every character that is like a named character, and even a lot of like generated characters, have histories with each other and with other cities and with other factions and things like that. And this is part of what is just sort of fun to discover about the, bespoke generated version of the game. So he's loved by the Fellowship of the Wardens, which is a very important faction. The Wardens are essentially a society, I guess, of people that will like send protectors to different villages. So every village in the game has a warden. So they will always have one of these dudes, and they're always you can always tell because they're in blue. And so they're admired by the city they're in. Usually, we're in Joppa. And they're usually disliked by like some random faction. So this is a randomized faction. And apparently he did something very horrible to them. So
that's pretty intense compared to everything else here.
Now see, it's interesting though, because I don't know if the flock of the Sultan Viridian, that faction could be a flock of sentient ducks, and he might not have known that they were sentient ducks, and so there's any number of things. But yeah, it also tells you sort of what he looks like. So he's got horns. He also has icy vapor, which coincidentally I have as well because of the freezing hands mutation we got. It also tells you what he's equipped with, which can be useful if somebody like shoots something at you and you're like, "What was that?" You can like just press L and look at them and figure it out. Importantly, up here under his name, it tells you what he thinks about you, so he's neutral to you. And it says how difficult it would be to beat him in a fight. So if you ever see that, do not pick a fight. And it is very easy to accidentally pick fights with people in this game. So by default, right now, because he's not aggressive with me, if I move into his space, we just like swap spots. So you don't have to worry about just accidentally attacking people from like moving around. But if I was to throw a grenade or something, or like purposely pull out my weapon and attack him, he would fight back. So even critical and important and named NPCs can be killed in this game. So be wary of the consequences of throwing grenades around randomly. Okay, so yeah, you can look at like things basically everywhere. So there's this other character over here. You can look freely without it, because right now it's like snapping to stuff. If you see at the top of the screen, it gives you some like more tools. So if I press F1, now it just like moves around like this, and I can just look at just random innocuous things, which can be useful. But look is going to be really nice for determining, like, if you see an enemy, you don't know anything about them, look at them first before you act, because you can get in a lot of trouble very easily.
I'll bet.
Yeah. Okay, but if you want to attack on purpose, so I just pressed escape to get out of look, by the way. You can hold control and press in a direction, and you will attack in that direction. So I'm just going to punch this wall. Bam. So that was me holding control and pressing diagonal versus just pressing diagonal, which, as you can see, it doesn't look like anything is happening, but if you look in my log over here, I'm like running into the wall repeatedly. And this guy's probably judging me really hard right now. Okay, so that's just sort of general movement. It's, again, weird if you haven't played many retro games like this, but it doesn't take too long to get used to once you do it. Okay, any questions about that stuff? I've been talking a lot.
I'm just thinking about how the general advice of being wary where you throw random grenades is, like, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that applies to life, I think, honestly. Yeah, okay, so that is just moving around and exploring. Let's talk about some of the menus, because there's a lot of menus, and they're going to be useful for a lot of things. So, first, we have ability. So I mentioned that I'm having my hand sort of like on the WASD keys and on the numpad. That's so that I can press the A button, because A is for abilities. And it will just show me basically all of the abilities that I have access to as this character. So by default, I believe every single character has access to Sprint and Make Camp. They're pretty self-explanatory. Sprint is a... if you don't have other options for like teleporting out of there, Sprint is a great way to just run away, because it will mean that you can sometimes move like 2 squares per turn before the enemy reacts and things like that. So it's good to not just like leave it turned on. Like, this isn't RuneScape. You don't want to like level up your sprint ability all the time. It's definitely good to just save, because it does have a cooldown. Make camp you can do whenever you want, but these are all like combat related abilities that are all different active abilities. I could go into detail about like how each and every one of these abilities worked, but just know that depending on what character you have, you're going to have different stuff here. And it's good to remember you have these things for combat, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. One thing you can do, though, is you can map them. So right now, every single time I want to use Dismember, right, as an example, I have to press A, and then go down here to Dismember, or press C, because it's on here. You can press Enter on this, I believe. Yeah, Enter. And then you can map it to buttons. So the buttons that are generally, like, free for this are, like, your normal, like, numbers on the left side of your keyboard. So, like, 1, 2, 3. Like, so I have like freezing ray on 1, dismember on 2, because I don't believe any of those buttons are reserved by anything else.
That's very MMO hotkey style.
Yeah, and you can see down here that they like changed order, so it will order these based on like what order you. Um, so if you put dismember on 4 and charge on 2, these will be in a different order. So that's one way you can sort of customize this hot bar, but honestly, like I basically just use this to remember like what my cooldowns are without having to pause. But because the game is slow, I can just pause and look if you want to. So A is abilities. From there, there's a bunch of other abilities, and a bunch of other menus, and I can never remember which menu key is which. I just tend to click one of the menu keys, which for me is I for inventory because I can remember that one. And this just goes into like all your general RPG goodness, right? So this is my inventory. We have a bunch of different categories of inventory here. Most notably, we have a bunch of water containers. So in the world of Caves of Qud, water is currency, and you also need to drink it to survive. So I think our starting character starts with a full water skin and then a couple empty ones. Because if you like sell stuff to a merchant, they don't give you money, they just fill your water skins with water. So you want to have empty stuff to be able to store your money in, basically. Which, it becomes very challenging as you start collecting a lot of money because water it is heavy.
Yeah.
So definitely worth sort of thinking about picking a place to like drop off all your extra money when you're not carrying it. Because the good thing about this game is that it's persistent. So if you just drop it somewhere, no matter where that is, it's not going to ever despawn. Unless somebody picks it up, which they probably won't. So that's a thing to keep in mind. So this is the inventory screen, and if you look, this is like all your different items, and you can collapse these things. To move in this menu, I'm just like using the numpad just like before to go up and down. So you can collapse things by pressing space. Space is essentially just like your default like select button. So I can select this beef jerky and it'll give me more options. I can look at the beef jerky and it tells me what the beef jerky does, and that is just good to know in general. So you can always look at stuff if you don't know what it does. But I suppose if you can find a handy chest somewhere. Yeah, one nice thing about Joppa that I hopefully have the time to talk about is that there are chests that you can use that no one will bother if you just dump your stuff there. Yeah, good point in the comments. Okay, so the reason why I said I didn't remember all the other hotkeys for these menus is because if you look on the bottom right, it shows you that they're essentially just like in pages and like your if you picture this being like your journal, right? And you can sort of flip through them by doing 7 and 9 to like roll through all the different menus. So that's what I normally do, is I'll open inventory and then like scroll through until I get to the menu that I want. And it goes back to inventory. So equipment. Basically straightforward here. This is just what stuff I have equipped, which is good to, to keep an eye on. Make sure things are where you want them to be equipped. Especially if you get to the point where, like, for example, you have multiple arms, or more than 2 arms. It might be worth making sure that you keep your best weapon in your primary hand, that sort of thing. You might notice that I have 4 feet and hind feet. Most characters aren't going to have that. That is because I have the extra set of legs for my mutation. So that's a thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, because every single time you, like, every time something in the game changes or there's something that's weird, it is reflected in the rest of the game, right? So it makes sense that if I had 4 feet, I would have 2 feet slots. So the game does that, basically. Same thing if you get like something cut off, you won't be able to equip stuff there anymore. Or if you have horns, you can't have a hat. So those are all things to keep in mind when like making your characters. Okay, so reputation, this is just a reference page. There's never really any reason you have to do things here, but if you ever see a faction reference and you don't know anything about them, it might be worth scrolling through and finding the faction and learning about them a little bit. So, like the warden, he mentioned a faction earlier, didn't he? I can't remember what they were called. All the different villages.
Flocks or something?
Yeah, the flocks of something.
So I
Is he
noticed your
bountiful?
reputation with cats is very low, which is not good.
This is a problem.
Oh,
Salt
flocked
of
with
the Salt
assault.
and Birdie. And so
Yeah.
if I click on that, you can see that they don't like me very much already. So, if I make the warden like me, they're just going to dislike me more, which at this point I don't really care because they already really hate me. Our reputation's at minus 500, which means that they will automatically attack me on sight. So that's fun.
The
Um,
Fellowship of Wardens aren't very happy with you either, though.
they are not. Yeah, they are not. But we are going to change that. Okay, so this is our quest log, which, again, we'll have stuff here when we get them. And this is Journal, which is where you collect knowledge. A lot of this game and a lot of the lore in this game really involves people trying to preserve their histories and putting a lot of value in learning about the history of the world. So, in Caves of Qud, there are, I believe, 9 sultans that were like these ancient historical figures, and you can learn about them. But all of them but Reshef, this one here, are procedurally generated. So we know about Reshef because we found a statue in town earlier while we were exploring, so we learned some of his history. Which is really useful because there's actually a character in the game that will give you XP for sharing bits of his history. So it's nice to collect those things. Where were we? Quest, journal. Tinkering, I'm not going to talk about tinkering. It's a whole, like, sub-game in this game where you can, like, craft stuff. This is your skills, which we start off with axe proficiency, dismember, but as we get more skill points, we can learn more stuff and customize our character. And similarly, this is our character sheet where we have all of our different modifiers, our mutations. If we have a mutation and we don't know what it does, we can look at it and it will tell us exactly how it works, which is nice. And we can also level up our mutations and make them more powerful. And that's basically all the menus. Most of it is reference stuff. Occasionally you'll be doing inventory juggling, making sure, you know, you have the best weapon equipped and that sort of thing, looking at stuff and comparing them. But in general, this is just for reference for different points in the game.
Very comprehensive.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Which is good because sometimes, you know, it's good to be able to be like, why is this thing happening? And be able to track it down somewhere. Okay, so, oh, there's one more exploring thing I did not talk about, and that is that space is sort of your default interaction button. So if you walk up to a door and press space, it's going to interact with that door. If you walk up to a person and press space, it's going to talk to them. That sort of thing. You can be more specific if, like, the game's confused. Like, if there was a, like, let me, so if I drop this bear jerky on the ground, yes, drop. So you can see that there's bear jerky on the ground. If I walk over it and press space, it doesn't know whether it wants me to grab the bear jerky or close the door. So it asks me, like at the top of the screen, it says, what direction do you want to use? So I can either press down, which is the middle of my numpad, to get the bear jerky, or I can press over to get the... So you can be more specific if the game is being weird about, like, I don't know what thing you want me to do here. It is pretty easy to be very, very specific, so you don't accidentally mess up.
That's a good thing to have there, just in case.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about Joppa a little bit. So this is the starting town, and there's quite a bit of things to know about this town that make it really handy. So first, there's important people to talk to. And right next, I think you spawn somewhere down here. Right next to where you spawn is this guy here, whose name is Mehmet. And he will give you some more information. You can do the water ritual with him. The water ritual is a very important, like, lore thing in this world. It's basically saying that, you know, because water is a precious resource, so sharing your water with somebody is, like, a big deal. And if you do that with certain people, it will change your reputation with other factions, and you can get stuff from them for doing this. So if we look at Mehmet, we can see that he is loved by these factions, but he is hated by a lot of factions. Which means if I do the water ritual with him, that these factions are gonna hate me more, basically. So, because all I get is, like, the villagers like me here in this one spot, and it makes a lot of other people hate me, I probably am not gonna do the water ritual with him, because I know for a fact that these, enemies here, the Naftali tribe, are really mean enemies. And if you can get them to like you, it makes the jungles a lot safer. So, and that sort of thing is just knowledge that you gain over playing the game. If you're looking to get into it, I wouldn't really focus too much on like being like, oh, Googling, like, who's the Naftali tribe? Why would I care? Just to experiment with stuff and figure that sort of stuff out, because that's sort of the fun of it, honestly.
It is consistently funny that there's just like birds. You are hated by them.
Yep.
Generally.
Yeah, they're very specific with factions. We have unshelled reptiles as opposed to shelled reptiles, and they are separate factions that disagree with each other over various things. Yeah, so it gets very specific, and it's also really cool because in the world of this game, like, it sort of feels like you can never assume something's sentience just by looking at it, right? There might be a pig walking around in town. I literally had this happen one time. So I was like looking for a quest giver or something in a town, and I could not find the quest giver. They were like, yeah, he's the mayor. He's that direction. And I would be running around and I could not find a person to talk to, and it turns out that the mayor was this like boar that was walking around, and I thought that that was just like somebody's pet or something, but that was the mayor. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that can definitely happen. There's a lot of things like that that are really, really funny. Oh, and what can help with that is also there's another hotkey that is handy is the Alt key. So if I hold Alt, it basically just filters out unimportant information. So I'm holding Alt right now, and it shows me that there's a bunch of chests everywhere, and the green are friendlies that you can talk to. Purple, I believe, are like key interactables, so like stairs, and like right now that is the statue of Resef that I got that lore from. So holding Alt will essentially just give you information really quickly. So if you can't find somebody, even if you've explored everything, just hold Alt and it can help show you that, hey, that plant that looks like a rock, or that rock is actually something I can go talk to. So that's a thing. Okay, so we can get a quest from him, actually. So that's a really thing you can do at the very beginning, is get all the starting quests. So I'm going to get the starting quest, and I would recommend reading about some of this lore. It's pretty interesting, but for now I'm just going to hurry and grab this this quest. So you can get a quest from him. The most important thing that you do, though, if you're interested in the main story of this game, and there's blood right here, and I don't know why. Somebody got murdered. Anyway.
Oh dear.
I don't know how that happened, but the most important person for you to talk to in this town is probably this guy over here in the bottom left, and his name is Argive. And he's essentially an old, like, retired, like, tinkerer. And if you talk to him, he asks you to give him a knick-knack, which, what he means by a knick-knack is a weird artifact of any kind. So any kind of artifact you find, you can give to him. And things that count as artifacts are, like, there's a lot of different things that count as artifacts. So, like, grenades are artifacts. Random high technology stuff is artifacts. So they're very valuable things that he wants you to give him.
Why is that guy blinking?
Oh, that's because he's asleep. Hold on.
Oh.
Yeah, phosphorescent, lying on a bed, asleep.
Just sitting there glowing.
Yeah, he's hydrated in his lane, flourishing. Self-care mode. Yeah. I just randomly remembered that flashing icon means he's asleep. Which, fun fact, you can attack people while they're asleep for extra damage, but I'm not going to do that because I'm feeling nice. Okay, the last, I might have wasted too much time. There might be too many people asleep. Hopefully it's not a problem. I'm looking for somebody. Oh, I can use this. I'm looking for somebody who is the Zealot. Hold on. Oh, did the Zealot died? Oh no, I think this was the Zealot. Oh no, how did this happen? Oh, because his book is here. His book is here. Oh.
Left the Zealot unsupervised and they just died.
Well, I'm gonna steal his book because books are... Yeah, just a random corpse. Oh no, well, I literally don't know why that happened. I don't know who he made mad over the course of me just doing my own thing over there. Anyway, that's tragic. Well, he does give you a quest. His quest, though, is, like, So his quest is just telling you to go to a specific place that is just a useful place to know about. So it's not like story critical, but that is unfortunate. Okay, well, that's the other quest you can do. You can also trade with this dude over here. So this dude is what is called a dromad. And dromads are, they're like camel people who are like wandering merchants, and they tend to have some of the best stuff. Oh, the tech shop friend hates the zealot. Oh, I didn't realize he would kill him. I've never had that happen before. So if you talk to the dromad, you can ask some very rude questions about what kind of creature are you, but he's very polite, so, but you can trade with him. And this is what the trade menu looks like, which is something that was really weird for me to get used to for a long time, of like how to like offer items and whatever. Basically what you do here is you go to the item you want or that you want to sell, and you press the plus sign or the minus sign to increase like how many of them. You see how that number's going up? And then once you're done, like so if I wanted to trade, this is like a bad deal, but if I wanted to trade all my bear jerky for 22 of these steel arrows, you can see down here at the bottom that it says how much his stuff is worth and how much your stuff is worth. And so once you're done, if you press O down here for offer, they will like resolve the trade. So that's how you do trading. It took me a while to figure out how to like you don't sell them one item at a time. You just finalize like the whole transaction is how it works.
And you have to balance that out if you just want trade. Does it fill in with like water that you have to give each other?
Yeah, or... exactly. So so that's what it means when it says drams. So hold on.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how much water. So it will fill your empty water skins or vice versa automatically. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. And so here's one sort of beginner tip if you're looking for a way to sort of get jump started on your gear without having to start out with just whatever your starting gear is. In Joppa, there are a bunch of chests, as you can see. The yellow is chests. However, the village will hate you if they see you stealing from them. So, oh no, this guy's asleep. So hopefully I can do this I've never tried to do this while they're asleep. I've only done it whenever they're like not in the room. So hopefully since he's asleep I can steal this. If I press space to interact and then left to look at the chest, it tells me this chest is not owned by me. But I'm gonna look at it anyway, and it has a bunch of stuff, which is awesome. So this is all stuff that I can mostly just sell. But one notable thing is this artifact here, because remember that Argive is looking for weird artifacts. So rather than keep this, I can just immediately go and give him that one. So I'm just going to take all. Did he wake up? I don't think he moved.
Said something about
says he's
them
dazed.
being dazed?
Oh no, he might be attacking me. Are you good? Buddy, you good?
Something happened, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I guess he sleepwalked. Okay, but he didn't see me, so we're good. Okay, whew. That was a little scary.
I heard something, but they couldn't tell what it was because you left fast enough.
Am I gonna do it again? I'm gonna try it again with the guy that's asleep. Hold on. Okay, see here, we got lucky. So sometimes these chests won't have any artifacts, but we have multiple.
Milky tube.
A milky tube. Yeah. It says why does he... Oh, I think that's just him, like, waking up because I made a sound, and he just wasn't fully awake yet. I think that's what happened.
Yeah,
so
that seems right.
Okay, so, basically, I'm not gonna keep doing that just in case they do see me, but you can then immediately take that weird artifact over here to Argive, and then you can give him whichever one you want. I'm going to first, though, go into my inventory and try to identify these artifacts. So, right now, it just says weird artifact, small platinum tube, small milky tube, because our character does not know what they are. And depending on your intelligence stat and some other things, you have a chance to, like, identify them, basically. So if I click on this, and I click down here at the bottom where we have X for examine, I have a low intelligence, so I might just break it. So let's see what happens. Okay, it is a skulk injector. This is a salve injector, which is very valuable. and this is a stun rod. So we identified all three of the things. So now we have the stun rod in our inventory, which also has a thing that we haven't identified yet, which I already know what it is. So in the brackets there, that's it's basically it means it's loaded. Like it's a weapon that takes like this is a battery basically. So like for the short bow in the brackets, it will have arrows whenever it has arrows. But yeah, you can immediately then take these to Argive for a bunch of XP. So I'm going to give him not trade, knick-knack. I'm gonna give him the stun rod. I could have probably taken the battery out and kept it for myself, but alas. But now he wants me to fetch him another knick-knack, and because I found 2 of them, I can just immediately give him 2 of them. Which is enough to level me up, so I am now level 2. So if you do both of those things, you can get level 2 before ever leaving the town, which is nice.
Get little music notes for it.
Yeah!
So, there's like a level of technology here so far. Like, is that within the current culture of this world, or is it like a post-apocalyptic thing?
It's definitely like a post-apocalyptic thing. So it reminds me a little bit of, most people probably haven't heard of like Numenera. But it's an RPG system I really love. And yeah, it's like super far post-apocalyptic. Like new societies have like formed, and people are finding stuff and using it, but not really knowing what it's for or where it came from. I see hype for Numenera in the chat. That makes me really excited because every time I say that, people are like, "What? You mean D&D?" Yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic. Yeah, sort of like Numenera. So yeah, so stuff like those weird artifacts. There's sort of a meme in this game that one weird artifact that you can find, I guess this is like a minor spoiler. When you go and identify it, it is a folding chair. is treated as like an ancient artifact, which I just find super funny.
Is it equipable?
No, it's just an item. You can sell it, you can place it, and you can sit on it. I guess.
That's actual use.
Yeah, it's a chair. Like, what do you think you could do with a chair? That's what you can do with a chair.
Well, wrestling has taught me.
Yep. Okay, so I was hoping to actually get time to actually go do the first quest or do combat, but oh my gosh, I've been talking for so long. So how much time do I have left? Oh my gosh.
You are right at your hour estimate.
Oh my gosh, that is ridiculous. Okay, so we can go ahead and call time. I just want to say that within an hour, I've like barely scratched the surface on this game. Because there's just so much to it. I've been just in Joppa the whole time. If I press the minus key, I know I said time, but I'm still going to keep explaining stuff. If I press the minus key, you can see that this is the size of the world. And each one of these squares is equal to a 3x3 square of these size squares. And that's only counting the surface. It is called the Caves of Qud, after all. So there is like infinitely generated tunnels underground and that sort of thing. And yeah, so if you followed along this far, the next thing you'd want to do is go up here to this place called Red Rock and do a quest. But yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully, like, and the real thing, the reason I wanted to do this is because I know that this game, like, a lot of people have been like interested in this game, but like will like boot it up and get so overwhelmed by like all the menus and like how do I even move, like how do I do what I want to do in the game, and it just has a little bit of a learning curve. But meet some baboons. Okay, while I'm talking, I'll go meet some baboons. We'll see if I get killed by said baboons. We're gonna auto-explore this area just to sort of show regular gameplay what it's like. I'm gonna be shocked if there's no baboons here. But yeah, that was really just the intro, showing the starting area, showing some tips. Once you get going, there's some really interesting characters that appear and that some interesting stories that can come of playing this game. So even though it's very thinky and it's very old school and definitely not like everybody's cup of tea, it is one of my favorite games ever. And so just being able to play around and show it off to people makes me happy. So.
Well, I definitely feel primed for it, and I can even think of some people who would probably be interested in it. So,
yes.
And who knows, maybe now you could like do a run for a showcase.
Yeah, that might be fun. I've never speed ran this game. Oh, but you mean just playing it? Yeah, no, I might do that in the future.
Sure.
Just to start a new character and just play the game. That might be fun. And yeah, if anybody watching is interested and like has questions about the game, you can always message me about it, and I will probably drop what I'm doing and be very excited to talk about it. So, um, yeah, so I don't want to keep going over time. I know we're ready to move on to the rest of our day, but yeah, thank you for joining me, even though I was mostly just talking at you. Hopefully it was fun.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing this with us.
Of course.
Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at. Hopefully, I don't die. Okay, hold on. You can find me at twitch.tv/RoadkillRevenge. I have never streamed this game and probably won't, just because it's sort of my like zen zone out game more than it is very exciting to stream. But I do speedruns of other games like Spyro and like other indie games that are maybe not this lo-fi and obscure, but probably some weird ones. So if you like games like this, you'll probably like the types of games I play on my channel when I do stream. It's been a while, so.
Yes. And if you guys want to find me, who's been with you for this as well, you can just find me on Twitch at ValeriaAsteria, and you can hang out with us at Lady Arcader's Discord if you want. I'm usually there. But stick around for some announcements after this intermission. Well, friends, next time that we see each other on this channel, it's going to be not in a track mode, but the Lady Arcaders Super Showcase 2023. We'll have plenty of games on here from July 6th in the evening at 7 p.m. until July 9th that evening. Once again, we're raising money for care, and I can't wait to see all of the people who will be running there, including everybody that you have heard here today. Now, maybe your submission, maybe you weren't able to submit to last. Maybe your submission didn't get accepted. Maybe you had 2 really cool submissions, but you were only able to have 1 be accepted. That's fine too. Attract mode is always taking submissions, and you can go over to ladyarcaders.com/start to get started on that. If you'd like to keep up to date on our events and such, there is a public Discord where you can access by typing !public in the chat. Now, stick around for the raid afterwards, and thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a great one!